Hello and welcome back everyone to Life of Us, my video blog on board gaming, Dungeons and Dragons and all things geek related. As you all know, I'm a big fan of the Dungeons and Dragons board gaming series, and these board games are really fun to play, if I want to put it simply as possible. They work well both as cooperative games as well as solo games, so you can play them by yourself if you needed to. They also compatible with each other, so you could build custom campaigns, which I've done as well. And they have really cool components and really cool miniatures. But the one thing that sets them apart from regular D&D is that they are not RPG based. They are standalone games that you play from start to finish. The latter versions, I think, started with Wrath of Ashardlan, Temple of Elemental Evil, and Tomb of Annihilation, and now Dungeon of the Mad Mage. They have elements of some bit of RPG by introducing a campaign mode, which lets you play through an overall narrative in the game, but they kind of lack the actual D&D RPG flavor that actually defines Dungeons and Dragons as such. There's no dungeon master, there's no role-playing element in the game, but that said, um, in a recent campaign that we've had, as well as a recent gaming session that I've tried to start to look at how I can actually introduce some RPG elements and RPG flavor to these board games. So today, I'm going to attempt to show you how our recent session went, where I threw in a bit of RPG flavor, some role-playing flavor and a storyline, and how you can actually extend that into your board gaming sessions if you are playing the Dungeons and Dragons board games. Be aware that this is not the actual D&D 5e RPG format. This is my own homebrewed concoction. It's scaled down, lightweight, and yeah, I hope that you actually enjoy it. So let's have a look at how I did it. Okay, so point number one is pick a theme. There are now 6 different versions of the D&D board games. We started with Castle Ravenloft, then Legend of Drizzt, Wrath of Ashardlan, Temple of Elemental Evil, Tomb of Annihilation, and now Dungeon of the Mad Mage. So there's 6 different versions of the game, and each have their own unique theme and flavor. If you're looking for something traditional gothic horror inspired, lots of undead creatures, then maybe you want Castle Ravenloft with Strahd, which is still probably my favorite game out of the lot so far. If you're looking for something where the players are going to be going through caverns underground and exploring the Underdark, then obviously Legend of Drizzt is where you go to. If you were looking for a more jungle-like setting, then Tomb of Annihilation, definitely. Or if you just want a traditional dungeon crawler where players are going to go up against a dungeon, after all it is Dungeons and Dragons, go up against a dragon, it is Dungeons and Dragons, not Dungeons and Dungeons, then you'd want something like Wrath of Ashardlan. So entirely up to you, depending on your pick of flavor. You could decide as a DM, and I'll show you how I'll introduce a DM element to this game, to this version of the game. Or you could have your players pick via poll or something. So yeah, first point, pick a theme. Point number 2, craft a backstory. Welcome to the village of Barovia in the northeastern lands at the foothills of the Balinok Mountains. The village is perpetually steeped in mist and dense fog and always under the shadow of the great castle known as Ravenloft. Well, you get the idea. So, craft your backstory. Why are your players in this particular setting? Why have they come to Ravenloft? It doesn't have to tie in with the actual D&D storyline. You could craft your own storyline. You could homebrew it however you wanted to. You could have a completely different setting. You could pull in elements from your favorite movies if you wanted to. You could do a Game of Thrones inspired storyline, or opt for something like Stranger Things with a Demogorgon if you had one, or whatever storyline you wanted to throw. You could have sci-fi elements. It doesn't necessarily have to be fantasy driven. Also depends on what components and how you plan on crafting your game, but craft your backstory however you feel needed, and take it from there. At the end of the day, you want to create the story in such a way that it becomes enticing to the players, that it draws them in, that it makes them want to actually be part of this world and be a part of this particular adventure. It gets them excited. You want to try to immerse them as much as you can. In my example, the three the three players in the adventuring party were passing through the village of Barovia, enjoying a nice ale at the tavern, when all of a sudden the door burst in. They'd heard rumors about strange happenings at the castle and strange happenings in the town, but they paid no attention until the door burst open and a grief-stricken young man came in exclaiming that his bride-to-be had been taken into the castle by the villainous Strahd. And obviously, being heroes, they all jumped to the occasion and eager to go and rescue this maiden. So that's how my initial story actually took place. Yeah, so point 2, craft a good backstory. Point number 3 is set up the objective. Try to keep your objective as simple and as obtainable as possible, as if you were playing one of the adventures from the adventure books in the game. Your objective could be something like going after the big bad boss, the big villain boss in the dungeon. Or it could be a heist scenario where you're trying to retrieve a jewel from a secret room in the dungeon and bring it back to the village elders so you can restore peace and order in the village. It could be that you're just trying to escape the dungeon. In our case, our objective was quite simple, really. We were trying to rescue a damsel in distress, and we only had until sunrise to do that before she would transform into this bride of Strahd. So it was time-based. On the DM side, I had some time tokens to keep track of the number of iterations, and I'll show you in a minute how that worked. But yeah, try to set up your objective, keep it simple, and try to drive the players towards their objective as best you can. Give them the freedom to do whatever they like, but try to iterate it and try to keep the narrative going by trying to drive the objective, or objectives, if you have smaller objectives, making one big total objective, if you want to call it that. Side missions, yes, not too many though. Always try to keep the main aim and the main goal in mind. And also, once the objective is achieved, it's a good idea to actually end the game. So players might feel obligated to want to kill every monster in the dungeon, but if they've already defeated the big bad, then feel free to end the game if you needed to. Just my suggestion. I'll show you how our objective actually played out right now. And set up some screens. I used some makeshift screens with some artwork that I downloaded from the Wizard site. As you can see, this went with our theme, which was around Castle Ravenloft. It's not exactly Curse of Strahd, but we made it feel like it was Curse of Strahd. On this side of the screen, you'll see all the cards, all the tokens, the time track, as I mentioned, to keep track of our damsel in distress before she changed into a vampire, the monster figurines and minis, some of the villains. There's the Howling Hag, as well as the Dracolich, the rule book, the villain cards, all of the condition and healing surges, condition tokens and healing surges, some dice, as well as traps, and a book to keep track, and a pen to keep track of which monsters were controlled by which player. Obviously, at higher player counts, this becomes a necessity, so you can actually know which monsters activated when. You could add some randomness. You could have a monster track with some monster tokens here to see how many monsters spawn. I threw in a Howling Hag as well, or you could put the tokens on the board, which I didn't do for our scenario, but I'll show it to you on the board when I show you the board in a second. But try to be fair, try to add a little bit of difficulty when necessary, or remove difficulty when players are really struggling, especially that if a player has been hit down to on his lowest hit point and he's been targeted for the most by villains. I tend to give that player the benefit of the doubt and opt to give him or cancel an encounter, or not hand out an encounter if needed, or give him a lower based monster if needed. Again, it's entirely up to you as a DM. You can decide what playstyle suits you, and depending on your players and the expertise. Yeah, so this is basically how the GM side of things was set up. Players were not allowed to look on the other side of the screen, so they wouldn't know what was coming, but they could ask for any monster card that activated to see what that monster or encounter actually entailed. I also include the adventure treasure cards on my side because that was part of the game and the scene and the scenario that we were playing. So yeah, that's how I set up the basic DM side of things. Doesn't look like much, but it actually played out quite well. Point number 5 is have more interaction. These games are very static in compared to actual D&D format of the game, but that doesn't mean you can't have any fun. Add as much flavor as you like, or add some voiceovers for NPCs or any characters you might be playing in the game, or any monsters. Try to add a bit of dramatic effect when necessary. You don't have to do it all the time. I thought it was quite effective in my group when the players they was really struggling to defeat. I think it was the hag at one point, and or it was a skeleton. Well, whatever it is, let's say it was the hag that they were trying to defeat. You could add some flavor and text when they finally shackle the hag with the interdimensional shackles, and she teleports away, and as she teleports away she leaves behind her foot, and you could have a scream say, "Ah, curses on you curses and custard, may your bowels be inflamed forever," as she finally disappears and or breaks itself into tiny pieces and limbs fly all over the place. Or when they slice a particular monster with a natural 20 roll, that's definitely a critical hit. So you could definitely add as much drama as you like and have the players feel the moment, be in the moment, just by explaining how the paladin jumps into the air, slicing with the sword, and she strikes the head of the Dracolich. As it falls to the ground, it tumbles and its tongue lolls out. It's green goo all over the place, but the players are celebrating. So don't feel afraid to add into action. Of course, with new players on board, players might not necessarily want to interact initially. Don't be alarmed. I think that's standard for most D&D games. It's okay if you don't want to do the voice acting and voice over acting. I tried. I'm not an expert. I'm not anywhere near the level of expertise that we find in shows like Critical Role, but I did try. You could add it if you wanted to and see how it goes with your players. I think it definitely does add a bit of flavor to the game and makes the game a little bit more enjoyable as well. But again, add as much interaction as you see fit. That's point number 5. Okay, point number 6 is choose a playstyle. Will you opt for a pre-built dungeon, as you can see in front of you, or will you go with the traditional expand and explore dungeon tile stack, as is the common gaming mechanic of these board games? Whichever structure you decide on, it's again entirely up to you, and I just thought that the pre-built dungeon looked way cooler for a first time dungeon session with some new players. I included the monster tokens, as you can see, a few items scattered around the dungeon. There's our damsel in distress Cassie with the HP around her. This is a scaled down version of the actual dungeon that we played. I had the players exploring different rooms, trying to find clues to drive the narrative forward and make their way into the crypt so they could actually rescue Cassie as they went along. In the pre-built dungeon, of course, black arrow tiles still mean encounters get drawn if the players end the hero phase on them. And players still explore a new tile by moving onto that tile and flipping over a monster token. For the expand and explore, it's still a great format of the game, and I definitely a format that I want to play at the next session. But if you have a higher player count, let's say it's 6+, then consider making the start tile a little bigger so you have more options to expand on. And normally, I think in these versions of the game, it's normally the 8th tile that has the special tile. You could, for a higher player count, make the dungeon stack a little bit bigger and make the special tile that needs to be found the 12th or the 10th tile, for instance, and make it the game a little bit, extend the game a little bit with more dungeon tiles that need to be explored. Okay, point number 7, add a plot device. You could add multiple plot devices. In our case, the MacGuffin was a lever, which there it is, was a lever token which the players needed to find, and which consisted of, as I explained as a DM, consisted of 4 little pivoted points which the lever could be moved into. The first one would, if it was flipped open, would remove all the doors, allowing players easy access to, or unlock all the doors, allowing players easy access into those special rooms. The second time would rotate all of the name tiles, like the arcane circle, the dark, well, not the arcane circle, the dark fountain. There were a few other name tiles that would rotate twice clockwise, the third time once anti-clockwise, and then the fourth one would have rotated the arcane circle to give them entry into the crypts. The rotation actually worked quite well because our players managed to trap a Dracolich inside the castle walls by rotating tiles, which I thought was hilarious at the time. And then also, if the MacGuffin is not going to be found, because you'd have to hope that the players actually do explore that tile and find the lever, add another MacGuffin somewhere. I think I did add a key somewhere around here. There it is. And if the players found the key, they could use the key to unlock any, I think it was this wall, any wall with a skull, to gain entry into the crypts anyway. So that was also a second option that you could use to drive a plot device, or to drive the story forward using a plot device. Also added some gems, which I thought added some flavor to create the storyline a little bit clearer. But feel free to add as many or as few plot devices as you feel necessary, but at least add one. It does help drive the narrative a little bit better. And the last but not least is point number 8 is have fun. As a DM, you want to try to make the players as engaged, make them feel as engaged as possible in the game and in the scenario, in the adventure that they're playing. And you obviously want to drive as much of the story as you can, but at the same time, do step back and just observe the game. It definitely gives you a sense of how players think and how players interact and what type of encounters you could throw at them just when they least expect it. Make it as hard or as easy as you need, or tweak it as you need. Particularly if a player is having a really bad time, you might want to tweak it a little bit lower the level of difficulty. And at times when players are actually having on a winning streak, you might want to push up the level of difficulty a little bit more. Do bear in mind that players have different playing styles, so you can up the ante or lower it as you see fit. Add a few more magic MacGuffins into your scenario, into your game, and be prepared for moments of his bizarre hilarity. Like I said, trapping a Dracolich inside the castle because the name tiles were rotating. That was hilarious. Also, our villain, which was Strahd, was having a really tough time actually biting players. He I think tried to bite the druid after he had transformed into his ape form. All he got was a mouthful of hair, which I thought was quite funny to actually act out, or add a voiceover on. The second thing that I thought was quite funny was that every time he bit the paladin, he'd roll a dismal 1. So yeah, for a vampire, he really did suck. Sorry, that was just a borderline joke. Anyway, tweak the game as you see fit. I think having a DM element in the game works really well. It's not necessary, but it does help to keep track of the overall tension, the overall story, and gives the game a little bit more flavor than what the adventure books actually do, because the adventure books contains a bit of text that you read through, but it's not really an RPG feel to it. Having a DM, I think, is definitely a plus, and from the feedback that I've received, is definitely a plus for this game. I'll probably be doing it in 1 or 2 more sessions. I obviously want to play the game at some point, so I'll hand over the reins to someone else to do for a few sessions in, but we'll see how it goes. Let me know what you think. Comments on the blog as always, and if you've done a dungeon master type format for this version of the game, I'd like to hear about it. Feel free to contact me via my blog or the email address at the bottom of this video. Do keep in touch. Until next time, bye.